Growing up in a small town teaches you things city life never could. It teaches you about community, trust, and, if you're like me, when it's time to get out and make something bigger of yourself. I'm Ava, and this is how my new beginning kicked off, not with a whimper, but with ambition fueling every step. After earning my business degree, I said goodbye to the slow-paced life and hello to the city's hustle. It was tough, starting from scratch, but I had a plan. My first coffee shop opened on a busy corner downtown. It was a dingy little place initially, but I poured my heart into it. Before long, it turned into a local favorite. A few years down the line, I managed to open a couple more shops, each one doing better than the last. Life was looking up, and for the first time, I started to feel like I could maybe have more than just my career. I was at the shop late one night, going through inventory, when my phone pinged with a message from a name I didn't recognize. It was from some guy named Ethan, hitting me up on social media. Normally, I'd ignore stuff like that, but something about his straightforward message caught my eye. "Hey Ava, saw your interview about the coffee shops. Impressive stuff. Ever think about expanding further? Would love to chat business, or just grab a coffee." I typed back, laughing to myself, "Coffee's my business, so sure, why not?" And just like that, my personal life started to change as much as my professional one. Ethan was different. He wasn't just talk. Our first meeting wasn't awkward, it was like reconnecting with an old friend. He had ideas, and he was eager. Not just about business, though. He seemed genuinely interested in me, not just what I did. One night, after we'd been seeing each other for almost a year, we were closing up one of the shops together. He was wiping down tables, and I was counting the till. It was all very ordinary until it wasn't. "Ava," he said suddenly, his voice serious. He walked over and took my hands in his. "I've been thinking, we're great together. You know it. I know it. Why don't we make this official?" I stared at him, surprised. "You mean like marriage?" "Yeah, why the hell not?" He laughed, his eyes crinkling in the way that made me laugh too. I didn't need to think about it. "Okay, let's do it. But, you sure you're ready for this hot mess permanently?" "As sure as I'll ever be," he shot back with a grin. It was simple with him. Easy. That's how I found myself engaged, gearing up for a whole new chapter in my life. That night, as we locked up the shop together, everything felt right. Life was good, bustling with the promise of new beginnings. Getting engaged felt like stepping into a whole new arena. But even as we waded through the details of catering and guest lists, Ethan dropped another sort of detail into my lap, the idea of a prenuptial agreement. We were sitting in one of my coffee shops after hours, papers and laptops spread across the table, when he brought it up. His tone was casual, but I could tell he was nervous. "Hey, Ava, there's something we need to talk about. Kind of a big deal." Ethan scratched the back of his neck, looking everywhere but at me. I raised an eyebrow, pausing mid-sip of my coffee. "Sounds serious. What's up?" "It's about, well, marriage. And money. And not messing up either," he finally said, meeting my eyes. I set my cup down, folding my arms. "You're talking prenups, aren't you?" "Yeah," he admitted, letting out a breath. "Look, I've been burned before. My last relationship was a disaster because of money issues. I just want to make sure we're both protected, no matter what." I listened, nodding. The idea didn't thrill me, but I got where he was coming from. In business, you protect your assets. It made sense in a marriage too, especially with my shops on the line. "So, what are you suggesting exactly?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. Ethan pulled out some papers from his bag. "Here's the gist. Neither of us goes after the other's money if things go south. But there's this one part here." He pointed to a clause on the page. "If one of us cheats, they pay the other $500,000. I whistled low. That's a hefty fine for screwing up. It's just a safety net. I know neither of us plans to mess around, but after what happened with my ex, I can't go through that again. She cheated, and it was messy. Thinking it over, I couldn't find fault with his logic. It was straightforward, like a contract in business. You breach it, you pay the consequences. Okay, I get it. It's fair. Let's do it. But just for the record, you're stuck with me now, and I'm not planning on going anywhere. We signed the papers the following week in a little lawyer's office downtown. It was nothing romantic, but it felt good, like we were laying down the groundwork for our future, making sure it was secure and stable. After signing, we grabbed lunch at a nearby diner. Over burgers and fries, we joked about how unromantic we were, hashing out contracts before we even picked out wedding bands. Who needs romance when you've got legal security, right? Ethan laughed, stealing a fry off my plate. I nudged him with my shoulder, smiling. Oh, absolutely. Nothing says love like a legally binding agreement not to cheat. But as we laughed and planned, I couldn't shake a tiny feeling of unease. Contracts were simple on paper, but life? Life was messy, eh? The first few months of marriage felt like we were living a dream. But slowly, a nagging feeling started creeping up on me. Ethan, who had once been easygoing and fun, began changing right before my eyes. His transformation wasn't sudden, but the signs were there, and they started to pile up. It was subtle at first. An offhand comment here, a sharp look there. But as time wore on, these moments became harder to ignore. We were at a friend's barbecue one afternoon when I first felt the sting of his jealousy. I was laughing at a joke Mark, an old college buddy, had just cracked. Ethan was beside me, beer in hand. Suddenly, he leaned in, his voice tight. Ava, you think you could tone it down? Everyone's watching. I blinked, taken aback. Tone what down? We're all just having a good time. He nodded towards Mark, his brow furrowed. Yeah, but you're laughing a bit too much at his jokes. It looks off. Stunned, I excused myself and walked over to the drinks table. His words echoed in my mind. Was he serious? It was just laughter. But looking back at him, standing there all brooding and moody, I felt a chill. This kind of thing started happening more often. At dinners, parties, even at my coffee shops. Ethan's once charming possessiveness turned sour, brewing into something darker. One evening, as we closed up one of my shops, his coldness came to a head. I was counting the day's earnings, and he was just staring out the window. Ethan, you okay? I asked, snapping the cash drawer shut. He turned, his face dark. Am I okay? Are you serious, Ava? Every guy that came in here today got a special smile, didn't they? That's ridiculous. I shot back. I'm friendly, Ethan, that's it. I've always been this way, and you know it. He scoffed, shaking his head. Yeah, well, maybe you shouldn't be. Not anymore. Not now that you're married. The words stung, and I recoiled as if slapped. The rest of the night passed in icy silence. After that, the rumors started. Whispers behind my back, looks of pity, or worse, judgment. Ethan's words, his accusations, they were spreading, infecting everything. One day, I confronted him about it. We were in our kitchen, a room that had seen better days, better conversations. Ethan, we need to talk about these rumors. This has to stop, I said, my tone firm yet pleading. He was leaning against the counter, arms crossed. What rumors? The ones about you being too friendly? Maybe they're not just rumors, Ava. Maybe there's some truth to them. The conversation spiraled down from there, and with each passing day, the gap between us widened. I felt like I was married to a stranger, one who viewed every laugh and every smile as a betrayal. Things had been rocky between me and Ethan for a while, so when I found his note that morning, suggesting we meet at a hotel to make things right, it felt like a breath of fresh air. Maybe this was our chance to start over, to wipe the slate clean. The note was simple. Meet me at the Crownview Hotel, room 204, at 6 p.m. Let's fix this, Ava. I love you. The handwriting was shaky, like he'd written it in a hurry or while upset. Either way, it sparked a glimmer of hope in my heart. I spent the day running errands, but my mind was on the evening. At 5:30, I left the house, driving through the city, the streets bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun. I arrived at the hotel with butterflies in my stomach, not sure what to expect, but ready for anything, or so I thought. The receptionist handed me the key with a smile, mentioning casually that the room was booked under my name. "Enjoy your stay," she said, oblivious to the turmoil churning inside me. I took the elevator up, my heart pounding with each ding of the floors passing by. When I reached room 204, I hesitated at the door, took a deep breath, and unlocked it. The room was dimly lit, curtains drawn, with a bottle of wine and a fruit platter on the table. It looked romantic, the kind of effort Ethan hadn't made in months. My spirits lifted slightly. Maybe this was a turning point. I poured myself a glass of wine, the rich red liquid calming my nerves. I sipped slowly, waiting for Ethan, my eyes on the door. Minutes ticked by. Then an hour. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the occasional clink of ice settling in the bucket. I texted him, "Where are you?" "I'm here." No reply. I called, straight to voicemail. The wine was making me dizzy, or so I thought. I hadn't eaten much, attributing the light-headed feeling to that. Finally, unable to keep my eyes open, I lay down on the bed, thinking a quick nap might help. Waking up in that hotel room, the morning light cutting through the blinds, was the worst kind of confusion. My head was pounding, and for a second, I couldn't place where I was or why. Then, the events of last night, or what I could remember, started to piece together, but something was off. Very off. I was alone, lying on the bed, and my clothes were nowhere in sight. Panic fluttered in my chest as I wrapped a sheet around myself, scrambling to find my phone on the nightstand. It was 8:43 a.m. My heart sank. Ethan was supposed to meet me here last night. Did he just stand me up? I dialed his number, my hands trembling, holding on to some hope that this was all just a misunderstanding. He picked up on the third ring, and before I could get a word out, he was already yelling. "Ava? Where the hell have you been all night?" I'd been out of my mind. Confusion twisted into a knot in my stomach. "What are you talking about? We were supposed to meet here, at the hotel. You never showed up." His voice turned ice cold. "Meet you? At a hotel? Are you joking? What kind of game are you playing, Ava? I waited at home all night." This wasn't making any sense. "Ethan, stop it. You left me a note, remember? Room 204, to sort things out? I've had enough. I even went to the police this morning because I thought something had happened to you. But clearly, you're just with another one of your lovers." The line went dead. He hung up on me. Sitting there, the room spinning around me, a dreadful realization dawned on me. This was a setup. But why? Why would Ethan do this? I dressed quickly, my movements robotic, driven by a need to confront Ethan, to clear this up. I arrived home to find him pacing in the living room, a storm of fury waiting to burst. He didn't even let me step fully inside before he started. "There she is. The unfaithful wife returns." His voice boomed through the house. "Ethan, please, let's just talk about this. There's been a huge mistake." I tried to keep my voice steady, but fear was starting to take over. "A mistake? Oh, I agree. Marrying you was the mistake." He threw a handful of photos onto the table. Pictures of me, in that room, in a bed, with a man I'd never seen before. My heart stopped. I don't even know this man, Ethan. I swear to you, I was set up." My voice cracked, the edges of panic seeping in. "Please, you have to believe me." His face twisted into a sneer. "Believe you? Why should I? Everyone warned me about you, but I didn't listen. Well, now I see it clear as day." The conversation spiraled, each word from him like a dagger. He accused, I defended, but nothing I said made any difference. In the end, he was resolute. I'm suing you, Ava. For every last cent, just like the prenup says. I'll see you in court. He packed a bag and left, slamming the door behind him. After Ethan left, the house was eerily silent. I was alone with my thoughts, which were as tangled as the sheets in that hotel room. My head was throbbing, and no matter how many aspirins I popped, the pain wouldn't budge. It felt like my brain was trying to claw its way out of my skull. Sitting there, it hit me, the headache, the grogginess, it couldn't just be from stress or a glass of wine. Something wasn't right. I grabbed my phone and called Melissa, a friend who worked as a pharmacist. Mel, it's Ava. Listen, I need your opinion on something weird. Last night, I had a glass of wine, and next thing I know, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. Barely remember a thing. There was a pause on the line. Ava, that doesn't sound right. You need to get a blood test, Ava. As soon as you can. I hung up and drove straight to the nearest clinic. The blood draw was quick, but the wait was agonizing. They told me results would take a few days. I drove home feeling a mix of fear and urgency. Just 2 days later, the bombshell dropped. A legal notice was delivered to my door. Ethan was suing me for breach of our prenup. $500,000 on the line, accusing me of infidelity. The court date was set for next month. My stomach turned. This was getting uglier by the minute. I called my lawyer, Dan, right away. Dan, it's Ava. I got the lawsuit notice. We need to meet. Come to my office, Ava. We'll figure this out. Dan's voice was calm, a contrast to the storm swirling inside me. Driving to Dan's office, my mind raced with every possible scenario. But then, as fate would have it, I spotted Ethan and that mysterious guy from the photos. They were laughing, walking into a bar downtown. Without thinking, I pulled over and followed them inside. Hiding behind a column, I watched as Ethan handed the guy an envelope. Thick, probably stuffed with cash. They didn't even bother looking around, too caught up in their dirty business. I snapped several photos with my phone, the flash off, thankfully. I left before they could see me and drove straight to Dan's office. I showed him the photos. His eyebrows shot up as he took in the scene. This is good, Ava. Really good. I'll call my PI friend, get him on this. We need everything we can get on these two. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and dread. Thanks, Dan. What should I do in the meantime? Just lay low, Ava. Let us handle things. Go home, try to relax. We're on this. Relax. Easier said than done. But I drove home, the images of Ethan and that guy burning in my mind. I was being set up, but why? What did Ethan gain from all this? Money, sure. But there had to be more to it. Every passing hour was a tick closer to the court date. I paced, I fretted, and I waited for the call from Dan about the blood test results and any dirt the PI could dig up. This was a game of patience, a game I wasn't sure I was prepared to play. But I had no choice. I had to clear my name, not just for the sake of the prenup, but for my own sanity. A few days after spotting Ethan and the stranger, my phone buzzed. It was Dan, calling with news that couldn't wait. I drove over to his office, feeling a mix of anticipation and dread. Inside, I met not only Dan, but also a private detective he'd hired, a rugged guy named Mike, who looked like he'd seen it all. Ava, we've made some significant progress, Dan began as soon as I sat down. Mike nodded, taking over the conversation. That guy in the photos with you at the hotel? Turns out he's an actor, name's Jason, mostly gigs in sketchy ads and low-budget films. Real piece of work. I listened, my stomach nodding. What did you find out? Mike leaned forward, his eyes serious. I had a chat with Jason. A bit of pressure about potential police involvement got him talking. He admitted your husband hired him to play a role that night at the hotel, To pretend to be your lover while you were out cold. My heart raced. And the wine? It was spiked with a powerful sedative, exactly like you thought. Jason confirmed he was instructed to make sure you drank it before he staged the scene. Just then, my phone pinged. An email from the clinic with my blood test results. I opened it immediately. Positive for the same sedative. Everything was falling into place, a horrific picture of betrayal. Keep quiet about this, Dan advised. Let Ethan think he's got the upper hand until we hit him with this in court. It'll be a knockout. The following week, while I was working at one of my coffee shops, Ethan walked in. He wasn't alone, a young woman was on his arm, looking smug and confident. Ava, meet Lila, my bride-to-be, Ethan announced loudly, making sure everyone in the cafe could hear him. The cafe fell silent. Customers stared, and I forced a smile, though inside, I was boiling. Lila looked at me with disdain, clearly buying into Ethan's lies. Ethan continued, his voice dripping with fake pity. Ava here couldn't keep faithful. But soon, all this, he waved his hand around, encompassing the cafe, will be mine. I clenched my fists, remembering Dan's advice. We'll see about that in court, I said calmly, my voice steady, despite the turmoil inside. They left, leaving a wake of whispers behind. I went back to work, my mind racing. The cafe was more than just a business to me, it was a part of who I was, built from the ground up with years of sweat and tears. Ethan's threat to take it away was more than just a financial blow, it was personal. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. I sat stiffly beside Dan, as Ethan's lawyer took the floor with theatrical flair. He painted a picture of a marriage poisoned by jealousy, claiming I flirted incessantly and ultimately betrayed Ethan. As evidence of the defendant's infidelity, we present these photos, Ethan's lawyer declared, displaying the images from the hotel room for the entire courtroom to see. Murmurs filled the air, and I felt every eye on me, judging, questioning. Then it was Dan's turn. He stood, calm and collected, and his first move was a game changer. The court will now hear from the man in these photographs, Dan announced, and Jason, the actor hired by Ethan, was called to the stand. Jason looked nervous, fidgeting under the gaze of the courtroom. I was hired by Mr. Ethan, he stammered. I thought it was a prank at first. I didn't know Ms. Ava would be harmed. I truly regret my actions. Dan then turned to the evidence that would clear my name. Your Honor, we have medical proof that my client was drugged against her will that night. He handed the blood test results to the judge, who examined them closely. But there's more, Dan continued, his voice growing firmer. This isn't the first time Mr. Ethan has been involved in such accusations. We have found that he has previously taken considerable assets from his former wives under similar circumstances, following accusations of infidelity supported by prenuptial agreements. Ethan's face went pale, his lawyer trying to interrupt, but the judge waved them down. Please proceed, Mr. Davis. Dan's final blow was a call for justice. We ask not only for the annulment of the prenuptial agreement but also for financial compensation for the defamation and emotional distress caused to my client. The judge nodded, taking in all the information, then called for a brief recess. When we reconvened, the tension could be cut with a knife. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, I rule in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Ava. The prenuptial agreement is hereby annulled, and Ms. Ava is awarded damages in the amount of $200,000. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Ethan looked defeated, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, relief washing over me. As we left the courtroom, Lila, Ethan's fiancée, approached me. Her eyes were wide, a mix of confusion and gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. You probably just saved me from making a huge mistake. She turned and left, not giving Ethan a second glance. The news of the court case spread like wildfire. It was all over the TV and internet, Ethan's past and his deceit laid bare for all to see. His reputation crumbled overnight. The ex-wives he'd swindled heard the news and began filing their lawsuits, eager to reclaim their dignity and losses. As for me, I returned to my coffee shop, the community rallying around me. The support was overwhelming. People I barely knew congratulated me, telling me they always knew I was innocent. The shop thrived, becoming more than just a place for coffee but a symbol of resilience.